was like, wait a minute.
Now that we're getting the hot tub, we're gonna need the high as well.
More power.
Passing out, Ray. Something from good.
And welcome to the Waterloo City Council work session. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bozen?
Here.
Mr. Nichols? Ms. Creighton-Smith? Mr. Childs? Mr. Greider?
Here.
Ms. Wilder?
Here.
Mr. Foyce?
Here. A motion, please?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as proposed, as well as the minutes of the April 3rd, 2023 session as proposed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And first up, we have a discussion of our solar group purchasing. So I think Mr. Greider, you have,
Yes.
Let's go.
I know that there were some questions. I just want to make sure that we answer all of them. So Jessica Maldonado from Progress Works has been very gracious to come and talk to us today to just kind of answer more questions specifically about our program and what we can do if we decide to move forward with this. So I will turn it over to Jessica.
Thank you for having me again here today. I had to Zoom in last time, so I appreciate being here in person, help have a better dialogue and help answer any questions. I just added a couple slides. I didn't want this to be repetitive, but just wanted to give a couple quick factoids about solar in Iowa. I know you guys are a very forward-thinking city with your 100% clean resolution, so I know this is probably easy background knowledge for you, but just a quick stat, solar in Iowa employs about 1,000 people. It's really been an economic engine. There's about 100 businesses involved in the supply chain throughout the state. It's really benefited both rural and urban Iowa with projects in all 99 counties. It spurred $337 million alone utilizing the state solar tax credit. So that means that investment's even much broader beyond that throughout the state. Solar prices have fallen dramatically over the last 5 years, and technology continues to push that down, making it even more affordable for the everyday homeowner to try to put that on their roof. And one of the most exciting stats, I think, especially for a city or a community, is that Zillow reports that adding solar to a home increases that home value by at least 4.1%. So as more homeowners in a community add solar, it actually increases the value of that community's housing stock, which, has a ripple of economic impact throughout that city and community further down the road as well. I know you guys don't have a municipal utility, but just wanted to briefly touch on how, locally generated energy does help add additional value to the grid, doesn't stress the lines out as much, helps make it more resilient in the case of bad weather, derechos, which we keep continuing to experience here in Iowa lately. It helps that grid bounce back quickly, helps, shave peak demand and peak load in the hottest days of the summer. All that local generation goes onto the grid to benefit all the local, businesses and homes. So just wanted to briefly talk about how locally generated solar helps really benefit everyone and helps keep costs low by shaving off some of those peak demand charges. So back to the nuts and bolts of the Grow Solar program. So what is it? At the very core, Grow Solar is an educational program. Goal number one is just to help break down those barriers for people to understand solar, to know the ins and outs of it, where to go to find a reputable installer, because unfortunately there have been some national kind of scammer type solar installers. So making sure they find a local trusted Iowa installer to help answer their questions and get good quotes, get financing questions answered. But then the second part is it really creates an opportunity to realize some bulk discount pricing. So the average homeowner might have to not pay quite as much because they're able to pool their purchasing power together with their neighbors. If you're a really large business, you get a little bit of that built-in scale just because you're buying such a large installation. So this gives a small business or a homeowner a little bit of a chance to get some of that bulk discounting by pooling their purchasing power together. Just a quick case study. I know I did mention this last time, but I think it's worth noting again. We recently just did the Polk County Grow Solar program last year. We had 10 cities on board, which was super exciting. They all seem to have a great experience. And actually, we're going to relaunch that again this summer. So Polk County 2.0, and actually the county is going to sign on this year. They're voting on it this week. So they just timing-wise weren't able to get that done last year, but we're hoping to have them on board for the relaunch this year. So I think that's a great testament that not only did they do it once, but they're coming back to do it again. Here's a few highlights: 432 kilowatts, which I know sometimes there's no context for what those numbers mean, but it was about 52 properties, 1.2 million in local investment. And again, if you think that that's adding about 4% to all the home values there, that's a big ripple effect. Some great local media coverage showing these cities are really forward thinking. It's a great place to live and start a business because they're thinking through innovative ways to make that community better, meet sustainability goals. But most important, that 360 people number, all those people took time out of their day to go learn more about solar. So at the end of the day, that's a huge win. So why Waterloo? We're trying to bring this program to the Cedar Valley. We know it's a great community. There's lots of pockets in different cities and communities in this county that have a great opportunity to showcase the things they can do to help meet sustainability goals. You guys have already shown great innovative leadership on clean energy goals, so we thought this would really align well with some of the goals you've already set. It's a great economic development opportunity. Again, more of that media outreach showing that you're that forward-thinking, progressive, growing city. And again, local enthusiasm, just giving us free resource to your residents and your small businesses that they can take advantage of if they want just to learn more. There's absolutely no obligation to ever go solar. It costs nothing of the city or the folks wanting to get the free education. And so how do you partner? It's really easy. You could be just a simple promotional partner and just, let us use a city name or logo, or you could get more involved. It's really kind of staff capacity, how far you want to go. You could have the option to have somebody on that advisory committee to help look through that RFP and provide input, because we do utilize one selected installer that's selected through that competitive RFP process. That's just to help streamline and also to help get that bulk purchase pricing. You can also have, host something at one of the city facilities. Like West Des Moines would host something at City Hall. City of Clive opened up their aquatic center. A lot of different cities had a unique venue in their area that they wanted to help showcase. So it's a great way to increase the visibility for the city as well. Some cities have asked for help reviewing and streamlining their solar ordinances. Some cities don't have these, which is totally okay too, but that's a service we could offer too if you ever wanted to help or see best practices or kind of tap into that brain trust of folks that have worked on ordinances in other cities. Of course, consideration of projects for city facilities, that's always an exciting opportunity. And with the passage of the IRA, as you may know, cities can now take advantage of that direct pay option, the 30% tax credit. So it's an exciting time for a city to think about going solar. And last but not least, just helping to promote and talk about the program with others. So it's kind of a choose your own adventure. You can get as involved as you'd like, but obviously would love you on board, at least in name, as a promotional partner as well. So that's the official program remarks, and I should have mentioned at the very beginning, I'm here representing the Nature Conservancy, who's one of the main project partners. So I do communication work for the Nature Conservancy, and then the Midwest Renewable Energy Association is really the brain trust behind the program, and they help with the logistical items for the RFP. They do a lot of the credentialing for solar installers. They do certificate training for solar installers in the Midwest, so they provide a lot of that logistical brain power as well. So I didn't want to go too much into everything I said last time, but happy to go back or answer any questions on what would be most helpful.
Council questions? So one of the questions that I got, and I think I heard you reiterate tonight, there is no cost
Correct.
to the city.
No cost
outside
at
of
all.
we would have city staff work with you, correct?
Absolutely. And we know every city staff capacity is different, so we could size that to whatever makes the most sense for you. So you could be as involved as much or as little as needed based on capacity.
So our staff would work with this group to go through an RFP process. I just want to boil this down to
Yes.
as basic as possible. So
Absolutely.
for
If
the
you
people that are
choose.
listening, understand what this isn't, we're not purchase, like we would have to come back and purchase for our city buildings and things like that to do that. That's not what you're asking us to do.
Correct. No, this is zero cost. This is a promotional educational program only, so zero cost. Staff person could be involved in that RFP process. Some cities like West Des Moines have chosen to sit it out in Polk County because they didn't want to look like there was any conflict of interest because they knew multiple solar installers. So it's really up to the city's comfort level. Some cities want to be involved because they want to see, they want to ensure it's an Iowa installer. They have some specific criteria they want to make sure is checked off. So again, as involved as you would like, but absolutely no cost to the city. That is correct. If the city were interested in looking to put solar on a facility, you'd probably want to put out your own RFP, and we'd hope that whoever the solar installer as part of this program could obviously give you a bid on that too. So absolutely.
And so there was another question I forgot. Anybody else? Mr. Nichols?
Hey, so thank you again for giving the information, come back and speaking more about this. And when you were talking about the education portion, you had said that one of them is helping the citizens understand how to go through a bid process and do that. So within this program, is that something that the citizens will get educated on and then do on their own as a group of citizens, or is it something that Grow Solar kind of guides them through?
Absolutely. So
is a part of the bidding process.
Yes, great question. So there's what we call solar power hours. So they're 1 hour long educational programming events. And for example, in Polk County, we did about 20 of them, and we put them all around the county, noontime, lunch hour, evening, some Zoom, some in person, trying to make sure we could fit everybody's schedule so people could get to one. And that really goes through a lot of, what solar is, how it works, how it's priced, what's the structure, how the group buy program works. So if, so many people go in, then the price gets a little cheaper per kilowatt hour, how the group buy program like that works. And then we also talk through financing, because that's something that people get really confused about. What, is there a state tax credit, which unfortunately there's not right now. There is a federal tax credit. What is that? What does that mean? Is it refundable? Going through all those questions, how does it impact my homeowner's insurance? Kind of trying to just help answer all those nuts and bolts and potential barriers. And I think the financing portion is really a key one, because there are some companies out there or national lenders that are trying to lock people into these 25-year loans, which probably is not in the best consumer interest. So just being able to provide some reputable, whether it's a local credit unions or banks or people that they could call and at least get their own quote and make sure they're doing their due diligence before they would get locked in anywhere. This program has no financing involved. There's no financial incentive for anyone, any of the partners, for them to go solar, or, use this installer. So it's really just educational. So we try to arm them with all the education they can get. And then it's kind of up to them if they want to sign with that. They could get a free quote from the solar installer that's part of the program. And then if they want to shop that around and look for other quotes, that's great too. And then obviously if they go solar, that's a personal contract between them and the installer. So we wouldn't be part of that piece.
So the group buying benefit portion is only if they decide to group buy with the installer that's chosen by that group. But the process of finding that installer during the bidding process, the Grow Solar people are helping. In addition to the education, they're helping the citizens through that portion.
Correct. Yes. And that is part of the RFP. So it could go out to all, like Iowa solar installers, and they can all bid, we're going to start with this base price, and after 50 people go solar, it would get this much cheaper. So that's a little bit what we can compare in the RFP, is who's got the lowest base price to start, who has the best price breaks. And you don't always necessarily go with the lowest. Like sometimes if a solar installer is so small, they can't handle the workload, or they could overpromise, and you want to make sure you're not doing that. So, but that's some of what we can check in that RFP too, is what is that competitive pricing that installer can offer. And obviously we'd love people to go solar through the program, but if they got a bid from someone else that they thought was better and went solar a different way, we still consider that a win. People are still getting educated and going solar at the end of the day. So,
Mr. Bozen?
Yeah, so you said there was 2 cities that didn't sign on out of Polk County.
No, actually, all of them that we had talked to did. Polk County, the county itself, we didn't get to just in time before we launched the program. And so we came back around this time and they had time to talk through it and they're voting on it this week. So
But can you have this program up here without the city of Waterloo's name on the program?
we probably could. I think it's usually more credible when, you know, a local, because the local consumer, average homeowner probably doesn't know who the Nature Conservancy is or the Midwest Renewable Energy Association. So having those local partners is really key to kind of just lending some credibility and legitimacy to it to make sure that they know it is a community-driven program. I think that's always been part of what's made it so successful in each county that we've done it in. Theoretically, you could do it without any local community support, but then I think it loses a little bit of that community-driven kind of enthusiasm and.
So when you put out your RFP and for an installer, you mentioned earlier that generally it's the same installer to get the discount and benefits, correct?
There's one chosen installer for the program.
One
correct,
chosen,
yes.
okay. And then, these panels, did they have heaters in them?
The
Solar panels?
solar panels, like a water heater or what kind of heater?
Any kind of heater. I mean, in Iowa winters, you drive down you see houses with a foot of snow sitting on top of them, which if your solar panels are sitting on your roof,
Yes.
they're a little less effective.
Yes, no, we do talk about that. And actually that's covered in the educational solar power hour. I actually went solar through the program when we did it in Warren County. I live in Norwalk. And so from personal experience, we always say, you know, Mother Nature can be the best heater for those. So ours, you know, traditionally slides pretty. They do get pretty warm just when the sun's beating on it or even not. So they clear themselves off pretty easily. So it's usually very minimal impact to a bill, but no, they don't have a built-in heater.
And when you mentioned the 1.2 million in Polk County, that equated to $23,000 per unit.
Yes, if you averaged it, but some might be smaller, some might be larger.
bigger.
Yep.
Sure. And is that about average? I mean, the homeowner's going to be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $17,000 to $25,000 for an install.
I would say, I think, and again, mine was in Warren County, but mine was probably closer to 15, but I had a really condensed roof space. It depends on the size. It depends on the building's energy usage. It depends on the complexity of it. You know, mine was lucky because it all fit on one slope. Sometimes if you have a really unique roof and you have to do multiple like little arrays, all those little things can add cost, but I would generally say somewhere between that 15 to 20,000 might be average for the normal home.
They always don't have to be on the roof.
No, they could
Be
be ground mounted
freestanding.
too. Yeah, and again, that gets back to some city ordinances. Some cities don't allow those, or HOAs may not allow those. So ground mounted aren't quite as popular as the rooftop, but they could definitely be on the
And
ground.
then you say the federal government's tax credit is 30%,
30%, yep.
but no state tax credit.
Nope, unfortunately not. That expired.
Then, and maybe somebody else would know more than that, but on that federal tax credit, is that a one-time tax credit or is it over a period of years?
It's one time and it's not refundable, meaning you have to have some sort of tax obligation to be able to draw it down. So it doesn't mean you have to owe taxes. It just means you have to pay taxes throughout the year. It does carry forward, yeah, for a certain amount of time. So you don't have to, if you didn't have a tax obligation the first year, it carries over, I want to say 3 to 5 years. I could double check that for you though.
Okay, so this is coming off your income tax.
Correct, federally.
So if you don't have enough tax obligation, you might have to draw it over a period of years.
Correct. Well, and this is where an accountant would be able to be better. The way it was explained to me is you don't necessarily have to owe as much in the equivalent taxes. You just have to have a tax obligation of some kind. So it does, if you had a $5,000 tax credit, you don't have to owe $5,000 to be able to get the credit. You just had to owe some taxes throughout the year to have a tax obligation to deduct against.
Okay, that's all I have, sir.
Mr. Chair. So just a couple of quick questions. One, I know that Grow Solar has partnered with others to help make this more affordable. I know they just announced a partnership in Polk and Lynn County. Is that something we could look at here in Waterloo? Maybe not this go around, but in the future if we decide to move
Yes,
forward?
absolutely, and I meant to include a slide on that because we traded emails about that. I should have mentioned that. So in Polk County and Lyndon Johnson, Neighborhood Finance Corporation, I don't know if you're familiar with them, they cover those areas, and they did help create both a low loan rate and then also a forgivable loan for low and moderate income folks. I don't think they cover this area, unfortunately, but if there is a nonprofit or a local lender, those are things our team would be happy to help explore to try to make something else here. And the IRA also had a lot of incentives for some low and moderate income clean energy projects. There might even be potential to tap into other funding streams if there was a local entity to work with to try to implement some of those programming. So that's absolutely something we'd love to help with. If you guys could help identify even potential community partners we could go talk to.
Sure. And if the council decided they wanted to move forward, what would be the next steps for us?
Absolutely. So some cities go all the way to doing a full resolution, which I could share copies of examples. Polk County, for example, is doing that this week in Polk County, but you don't have to. It could be, I know Clive, for example, just did a simple council vote, or one other council, they didn't even feel they needed to vote on it. They just thought it was a mayor-led decision and they move forward. So it's really kind of up to you and what your process is. We'd obviously love to have you. And the other thing I forgot to mention, we also try to do some sort of local nonprofit project as part of each county. So in Warren County, we actually did a women's shelter and gave them an installation through some grants we were able to fundraise. In Des Moines, we're really excited. We're actually just starting right now putting a project on the new Urban Dreams rooftop. So again, it's really exciting because that they're going to have almost 100% of their energy paid for, which then they can reinvest that savings back into their programming and their mission. So we always try to look for a great community partner, kind of nonprofit, that we can try to go out and help find some grants or some other fundraising to really make an impact in the community as well. So that would be another component if you can think of good nonprofits that might be an opportunity for something like that as well.
That's all I have.
Well, that's perfect timing. So thank you again
Yeah.
for showing interest in our city, and we really appreciate it. So
Thank you for having me.
wonderful.
A
Thank
second
you.
time.
All right. So next up on our agenda is a discussion of the fiscal year 2022 audited financial statements. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council.
I like that you were shaking your head along with some of the financial stuff. Yes, that was, yes, appreciate that.
So I've got Kevin Smith here to go over our fiscal 22 audit, and I'll let him take over.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We have a brief presentation to go through the results from the fiscal year 22 audit, and then happy to answer any questions you have. Either stop me throughout the presentation or at the end, I'll leave plenty of time for questions as well. On the agenda today, we'll go through just some financial results, just at a very high level, and then talk about internal control and compliance reporting, and then just some required communications that we make to you at the end of the audit process. So if you flip to slide 3, talking about the summary of the audit process, as you all probably know, you are required to have an external audit by both state and federal guidelines. The main purpose of the audit is to express an opinion on the financial statements and whether those financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The opinion that you'll see in the financial statements, which is the large bound document that you have, is an unmodified or a clean opinion. So that is the highest level of assurance that you can receive as a part of an external audit. We do look at internal controls as they relate to financial reporting. We don't give you an opinion on internal controls, but we would inform you of any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that we come across as a part of our audit process. And I'm pleased to report there were none that were reported to the city. We also test compliance with federal grants and also some state requirements as well. So I'll go through those results at the end. This first slide here, just showing some of the financial information, shows all of your governmental funds. So not just your general fund, but all the governmental funds, looking at revenue from 21 compared to 22. So there's about a $8.4 million increase in total revenue, which is about a 7%. The biggest increase there you'll see within other taxes outside of property tax, just had a modest increase. Other taxes and then other charges for services as well. Property taxes obviously being the largest source of revenue for the city. And the next slide shows the flip side and shows the expenditures broken down by function. So you'll see there was about a $3.1 million increase, which is about 2.2% over 2021. The largest increases you see within public safety and community and economic development. Most of the other categories remained relatively similar to one. And then the next slide just shows a pie chart of the general fund. So this is just the fund balance of the general fund was just under $27 million at the end of fiscal year 22. 46% of that is unassigned, which has not been designated by council or has any external restrictions on that. The assigned portion, that 22%, is an internal designation, basically something that the city itself has set aside to spend in the future. And then 28%, which is about $7.5 million, that restricted portion is some things that are restricted by external sources. So you can't change the purpose of how you spend that money. And then this next slide here, there's a lot of colors and a lot of years, but just going back 10 years, just showing revenue, expenditures, and then fund balance. You'll see positive trends really with revenue, and then also that decrease in expenditures from compared to 2021, and a slow, steady increase in the fund balance of the general fund as well. And then one thing that most governments monitor is looking at that fund, the unrestricted fund balance in days. So taking your fund balance, comparing it to your expenditures, and taking that percentage times the amount of days in a year. So it equates to about 106 days, which is a little bit of a decrease from 21, but the GFOA's recommendation is at least 90 days. So usually most governments have some goal between 90 and 120 days. So you're still within that range.
Mr. Mayor? Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Is this in the general fund balance, is that your cash balance?
That is the equity, that is the fund balance. That is that 27 million.
Does that include ARPA funds?
Anything that, it could have some ARPA funds in there if it had been recognized into revenue, but that didn't go in your general fund though, did it? You had a separate fund for ARPA? It did go into general, okay. So it would include some, I don't know how much.
But you don't know how much
I don't.
This ARPA that's in this 106 days?
I don't know the answer to that right off. Yeah.
I don't think it's, because we wouldn't have dropped that much from the time, from 113 or so till we got ARPA. So if you can get Councilman Bolton and then the rest of the council that answer, that'll be good.
And one of the requirements to recognize that ARPA fund into revenue is that you've spent it on an eligible expenditure. So you really, once you spend that money, you recognize that revenue, and then it's a wash in your fund balance. Until you spend those funds, it sits as deferred or unearned revenue and isn't reflected in that fund balance. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then just one slide over the city's enterprise funds. So this is going to be your sewer, sanitation. What you want to see here is just that you're showing positive income, and you're not having to finance the enterprise funds with governmental revenue. And so you'll see positive change in the net position or the equity of those enterprise funds. And then the next slide talks about the internal control and compliance reporting. I mentioned previously no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control. We also issue a PFC, the passenger facility charge audit. The FAA requires that we issue tests and compliance around the PFC that the airport collects and whether it was spent for an approved purpose. And that report was an unmodified clean opinion as well, no findings as it related to that testing. For the single audit, which is the testing of the federal grant programs, each year there's certain major programs that are tested. They're tested on a rotational basis. This year there were 3 programs that were tested that I've listed there: the lead hazard reduction grant program, airport grant, and then the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. So those were the 3 major programs. There were unmodified or clean opinions issued on each of those programs. No significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses. There were 2 findings that you'll note within the compliance report. that were around late filings of some required reports for both the airport program and then the coronavirus state and local funding grants. So those reports were submitted. They were submitted past the 30-day requirement for each of those programs. So you'll see those findings written up, but again, not material instances of non-compliance, but something that did get reported within the compliance report. And you'll also see then management's plan, corrective action plan, to make sure that those findings are addressed. Last slide here, just some things we're required to communicate to you at the end of the audit. I mentioned the unmodified clean opinion on the financial statements. Also, there's some written communication to you that lists out some significant estimates that are included within the financial statements. Those estimates are included within the scope of our audit. So we test those and use independent actuaries to test things when it comes to pensions and independent investment testing, valuation testing as well, and did not have any issues with any of the estimates. There was one new GASB that was adopted this year by the city, GASB 87. So that is the new lease standard, very similar to what's happening in the for-profit world with FASB, is basically bringing on all of your leases to your balance sheet. So there's not that difference between capital and operating leases anymore. All of those leases get put on the balance sheet and recognized and amortized over the life of the lease. The city has mainly lessor activities, so assets that are leased to others. So I think as a result, there was about a $2.5 million lease asset that you'll see in the financial statements this year. That's in a corresponding deferred inflow of resources that gets recognized over the life of the lease. So you'll see some new disclosures in the reports that weren't there last year. There was only one immaterial audit adjustment that was proposed as a part of the audit process. That's what you want to see. We didn't have to come in and propose entries as we went through our testing. No past audit adjustments, no disagreements with management or difficulties performing the audit. We had full cooperation from everyone at the city, had access to all of the information and departments that we needed to have access to complete the audit. So I want to thank them for their work in getting the audit complete. It was a big undertaking as well with the new GASB standard this year, and did a great job handling that new standard. So that's all I had, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
I have a quick question. Mr.
Yes,
Mayor.
sir.
From start to finish, how long does an audit, for you guys to come in to audit us? Because now, we're April 17th. When would it have started and ended?
Correct. Normally, it's due to the federal grant audit is due to be filed by March 31st. And that's when we had issued by the 31st and filed that on time. Historically, we've come to you in either December or January. This year with the new lease standards, the vendor that the city was using provided a lot of that lease information to them in January. So we had to find time to kind of audit that after January, and there were some delays on our end. And so usually we would have this out by the end of January.
And the reason I ask is I was going through Senate File 356 and House File 1, and there's some parameters on when the audit has to be done now, if those pass. Okay. And I believe it's by the end of December. That's why I was wondering if have you reviewed any of that or seen that?
I have not. I'm not familiar with that, but they usually that 6 months. So you file with the GFOA, which to get your certificate of excellence in financial reporting. That's usually due within 6 months after the end of the year. You're able to get extensions for those, so the GFOA certificate still can be obtained and be awarded to you, but normally that 6-month window is what we look at anyway, and what the city's goal is.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yep, and I think the finance department, along with the auditors, did an incredible job. It was a year of transition for us, and Bridget, Kim, and the rest of the finance department had really stepped up, and so I would assume next year the process will be even more streamlined. That is the hope. But did a really incredible job trying to work with you and the rest of the departments that needed to provide information as well. So we definitely want to thank you so much for all your work and all your patience, but definitely want to give kudos to our finance staff for all the great work they've done over the last several months.
I agree.
All right, any other questions, council? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is George or anyone here? Chris, is George on or anyone? Not yet.
It's nice to see a good audit.
So if you like to,
Make a motion to recess until our guest arrives via
Second.
Zoom.
motion been made with the second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, you got 5 minutes.
Out of recess?
Second. That motion has been made with a couple seconds. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we are back in session. We have the distinct honor to be joined today by our representatives from Honeywell. Mr. George has been here, and just to kind of go back a little bit, I was attending an Accelerator for America meeting, and I heard one of the greatest presentations I've heard, presentation about thinking outside the box and how to take a look at where we are, what we're doing today, and how to make sure that we plan for the future, whether it was climate, whether it was broadband, but in a number of different areas. And we're so grateful that we were included as one of 5 cities, Waterloo being the largest of those 5, but the smallest of those 5. But I like to use the words that George used, that Waterloo is definitely punching above its weight. And so today, without further ado, I'd like our Honeywell representatives to lead us through this smart city plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome, Council. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to be with you today and to have worked over the last several months on the City of Waterloo's Smart City Strategic Action Plan. I see with me is Kirk Rabius on our team. He is our solution consultant. I have been battling a stomach virus, and if I pass out, Kirk will take the baton. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and walk everyone fairly quickly through the strategic action plan, trying to leave plenty of time for Q&A on the backside. If you have a question that is urgent along the way, I'm sorry, you cannot ask it. Of course, stop and ask. Let's see, I will share my
George,
screen.
George,
Yes,
are you
sir.
going to introduce yourself formally and who Kirk
certainly,
actually
sir.
is?
Yes, I will. Let's thank you. So let's get this back here for a moment. Trying to figure this out. I am George Carrianis. I lead Honeywell's North American Smart Cities team. My background is in smart cities, smart grid, complex systems. Been with Honeywell 2 years. As Honeywell has been in this space about 12 years, and we entered the North American market 2 years ago. I have served as an elected official, as a council member as well, and am a lead accredited professional. Kirk?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Kirk Rabius. I'm the North America Smart City Solution Consultant for Honeywell. And so I've been working with George and team and members of the Waterloo organization and departments to think through some of these projects. And so really happy to be a part of it. And my background is in deploying smart cities across the United States and globally. And so really happy to be here and happy to see where this goes.
Thank you, Kirk. Mr. Mayor, would you like any additional context?
No, sir, that's fine.
Okay, so this is our Smart City Strategic Action Plan version 1.0, our final deliverable. This is for your final review, council members. You can input to it, but we want to get it approved on the 1st of May. I'm not going to go into presentation mode because sometimes it screws things up, so I'm just going to move slide by slide. There is an introduction letter from Mayor Hart. This will be shared with the community, really about external facing. So what we're going to talk about is the reflections over the last several months. This picture was taken during our kickoff with about 24 stakeholders, internal and external. We had it at the convention center. And you get some images of the brainstorming that we had there, but really we want to get ahead and talk about this particular project recommendations. The Smart City Maturity Model from consulting firm IDC is a useful tool to map where a city is today and where they might want to be in their journey. I think it's very important to point out from Honeywell's perspective, smart city is not some different thing. It's not some pixie dust that a vendor sprinkles on your city. It is really everything you do. It is every project, every person, every process and policy that you have in your city today. You are a smart city. In fact, you're an exceptionally smart city relative to your peers. So I don't want you to think that smart city is this other thing we write a check for and we do it or it just happens. It is a journey of continuous change management. That is it, about improving the quality of life by improving your operational efficiency, your public safety, your community resilience, and your economic development, as an example. Today, in this IDC model, we see the city of Waterloo as opportunistic, and the plan we put forth is a 7-year plan to get the city to a sustainable version as defined by the IDC. We had 5 cities in the Accelerator for America cohort, including Kansas City, in addition to Waterloo, Cleveland, Kansas City, San Diego, and Louisville. And this is self-reporting on 4 different questions. So take it with a grain of salt, but it's indicative. And what just stands out to me is how Waterloo collectively is heads and shoulders above their peers in smart city maturity, right? You really have done a tremendous job at beginning systems of systems integration, breaking down those departmental data silos. Really done a great job. And then, you fall off, especially on data timeliness. But this is just a relative snapshot. And congratulations to the level of smart city maturity that the team has achieved thus far. The next 2 slides talk about the voice of community. You have these hard copies. I'm not going to read them. This is really just some representative quotes during the interviews. But we talked to several dozen folks. We heard you, and we put together a plan that is intended to really move the needle forward. We also, unique to Waterloo, you had the most extensive by far resident outreach program. Almost 300 survey responses and almost 400 total written responses. We had, I think it was almost 60 people in person at the event in late November, and then kept it open for a couple weeks. Just a tremendously effective job at community outreach. So really impressed with that. And this is not surprising what the residents said. What they like about Waterloo is your quality of life, your cost of living, the neighborly feel that your community has. And what they don't like is, I would call it the perception of safety. There's safety in its absolute term relative to personal and property and violent crime rates year over year. Those are absolute numbers. But the perception of safety is what plays a much bigger role in some of the feedback we received. And you battle those 2 things slightly differently. So we partnered with Accelerator for America, and they helped develop a resident-friendly brochure concept. And so it's really a day in the life, before and after, in regular layman's terms. What might this mean? So this could be used by yourselves when meeting with constituents. It could be online. It could be distributed. But we provided a draft, and the communications department would want to take and run with this if it's something you think is useful. And so it's just to counter the perception of safety. There's a way to do that through data, actually sharing more and more data with the citizens. And then as you begin to invest more and more money in bold initiatives, enrolling these residents and businesses through cities don't use the term marketing very much, right? It's communications, but really getting a multi-pronged communication strategy in place so that everyone is rowing in the boat at the same time and not hitting each other or you with the paddles. That's really what you want. Now, Mary Ellen Wiederwall is the CEO of Accelerator for America. She's the one who reached out to me to say, hey, we want to do something special for our member cities. And Kirk and I and the team had been doing smart city strategic consulting for several years for various cities, several dozen. And so we thought, well, let's offer a smart city strategic plan and pair that with a grant, one or more grant applications to go chase this IJA funding, because a plan that is not funded remains an interesting slide in somebody's computer, and we don't care about that. We care about actually transforming communities, and to do that, we have to help get the funding, because I haven't met a city yet that has money, just saying. So we've got a 7-year plan that we've laid out. It is a roadmap to objectively become a smart city. And I want to point just one moment to that everyone is generally familiar with ISO safety standards, quality standards. The International Organization for Standards, ISO, has like 26,000 standards, and 3 of those relate to smart cities, resilient communities, safe communities, smart communities. So when a politician or a consultant crows about a city being the best XYZ, that's all marketing spin. If the city of Waterloo follows the metrics, the metrics that are defined, and I've included them in the back and they're in the report, if you just track those indicators over 10 years, you will objectively become one of the smartest cities in the world, simply by being aware and then managing to those metrics. And the perfect example is, what does quality of life mean? It's so subjective. It's also objective, and it's defined. So don't fall for any marketing hype. Pursue certification with the ISO. And we've included a dozen projects that we think move you in that direction, and we'll start talking about that. Consultants need models. And so this is our smart city model. I don't want you to think that this model only applies to smart city projects. This, the model of solution pillars and cross-cutting horizontal themes, this works. You know, I want you to take this model and use it every day. In every project, in every policy, in every investment decision, I want you to use this model. We call it a smart city model because we came up with it. But it, as an example, foundational infrastructure. The city of Chattanooga, as you may be familiar, in 2012 embarked on a municipal Wi-Fi, a municipal ISP program. They built out a bunch of fiber. They have the best connectivity, the fastest connectivity, the cheapest connectivity by far in the country. And now they weathered COVID much better because of that. Now they're deploying some of the smartest intersections in the country because they have built on this foundational infrastructure. So it's a good way to think about all of your investments and your policies and programs. And then the cross-cutting themes ensure that you're getting a 360-degree view of everything, so that you're really ensuring social equity in a nutshell, and that the residents and businesses are always at the table. So use this going forward. Now, we recommended 12 projects across these pillars. We're going to talk about them sequentially very quickly. Foundationally, we're suggesting a smart city operating system to really overcome those departmental silos that are inherent in every city. Really become a data-driven organization, data-driven decision-making organization. So to accelerate your e-government approach, it's not only keep doing, and I want to say, in many of these projects, the city is already underway, and we wanted to recognize that. And in some of these projects, they're completely new ideas. So we just wanted to define and recognize the great work the city is doing. So ubiquitous connectivity, well down your path. Accelerating this e-government transformation so that everything a resident or a business needs is here, can be accessed from wherever they are, whenever they need it. and that'll really prepare you for the next crises. Innovation districts, we're going to talk about all of these. You've got the hard copy, so I'm not going to list them. Accelerating your ubiquitous connectivity program is highlighted in green because you're already doing a great job. And does everyone have a hard copy of this? I want to make sure.
We have,
Mr. Mayor?
yeah, we have online copies, ubiquitous.
Oh, okay. As long as it's, I don't want to assume someone has some content that I'm referring to and flying past, because I want to be very sensitive. Okay. So this is really just expanding your connectivity strategy, with in particular with a few different technologies, and really just fleshing that out even more aggressively. I'm going to keep moving so we can spend more time on projects that you're not currently doing. Accelerating your e-government transformation. As I mentioned, this is modernizing City Hall, getting your IT foundation future ready, and bringing more and more residents into the government experience, both for permitting and trash, all of their regular routine issues, as well as voting and really education and communication, getting tighter and deeper with the residents in the city. So this is about operating more efficiently. How do you take paper out of the process? How do you take a 2-week process down to 2 days or 2 hours? Whatever that is. This is operational excellence, and you cannot achieve this without the technical underpinnings that make that happen. And we can come back to any of these. Implement a complete streets strategy. This is really about thinking about mobility in a completely integrated way that isn't just about traffic lights. It's not just about video cameras. It's not just about bicycle lanes or anything. Pardon me, I think this is in the way. Get that out of the way. It is, this is really putting a strategy, a comprehensive strategy together so that the city is much more likely to be awarded a DOT grant, a planning grant followed by an implementation grant. And this is really smart traffic signals with all of the Internet of Things sensors, including video cameras, all of the IoT things in the right of way today, having a comprehensive strategy so that you stand out from other cities that don't, and you get that funding. Deploy innovation districts. This is part tech, part policy. And so this is really about identifying what are the next clusters of economic growth for the city. Right now, you are heavily dependent on ag, right? You got 2 large employers. So what is next? And how do you nurture that? How do you bring academia into the fold? How do you bring startup capital and startup brain power into the community? And so this is really intended to be both a place and a organizational structure to foment innovation. All those people want to move out of San Francisco, Silicon Valley, so you got a great opportunity there.
Yeah, weather is really...
Optimize police department assets. This is really about reducing crime by putting cruisers and officers where they need to be, when they need to be there without profiling, in a sense, okay? This is using advanced predictive analytics and existing system data, weather data, to reduce crime. I can't put it any simpler. Smart parks, you have a great parks program. And we think deploying technology throughout your park and trail system will enrich the user experience and improve your community's quality of life. The example we have here in Kirk on the phone here with us has really been exceptional at this. He helped the city of Atlanta capture a $30 million grant for connectivity along the Beltline. Atlanta has a 22-mile loop around the city called the Beltline, if you're not familiar with it, which is a repurposed rail loop. And they're converting it for economic development. Kirk, if you want to take a minute to talk about the Beltline and the impact on the city.
Oh, yes. Thank you, George. Yeah, it's really interesting. The City of Atlanta's Beltline development, they installed dark fiber, so basically fiber that hasn't been switched on yet. And they've recognized that they need to install smart safety solutions, smart street lights, and a more interactive, deeper engagement for trail experiences and for families. And what they're finding is through this activation, economic development is unfolding, and it's really starting to put additional resources to work. Small businesses, whether it's installers for electrical infrastructure, it's really interesting what's happening. And so we believe that, you know, because you have such a great system there, we could really help you activate through technology deeper experiences for families, visitors, and residents, living within your community.
Kirk, can you highlight the food desert innovation? This is awesome.
Yeah, the food desert innovation is really exciting. So there's a small minority business in Atlanta called Nourish and Bloom, and they focus on bringing fresh food to food deserts and underserved populations with an autonomous containerized building. It's kind of like a container that you would see like a food truck, but it basically automates fresh food and is subsidized. So it uses the SNAP program. So individuals can go up to this Nourish and Bloom, containerized facility and access fresh food, and they don't have to walk, 2-3 miles to access fresh food in other areas. And so it's kind of bringing the food to where people are to access food nutrition and address food insecurity.
And social inequality.
Yeah.
So thank you, Kirk. So the point we wanted to emphasize here is think boldly about your future and everything you're doing, and that, push innovation where it is cost effective, or at least where it is promising, and the payback is exponential. And I apologize if you see me eating. I'm shoveling chocolate in to try to keep my energy up. Sustainable solid waste management, you're doing a phenomenal job on here. So just implement more advanced technologies, things such as a broader RFID collection, and try to optimize your vehicle miles traveled. Always thinking about from a climate action perspective, sustainability perspective, what is your community's carbon footprint? What is it per capita? What is it for municipal operations? And how are you going to reduce that over time? So every action you can take from a climate perspective is critical. Procure managed cybersecurity monitoring service. We recommend this to every city we talk to. No city thinks they need it. No city likes us to talk very directly about it. I will say that I worked several years, I'm a military veteran, and I also worked at Lockheed Martin for several years. And the recommendation here is no matter how good your people and your policies are, you're not as good as the state actors that are beating on you every day. And so this is simply think about procuring a 724 managed cybersecurity monitoring service from a national security focused firm, a company that protects our nation's deepest, darkest secrets every day. And so it's just an overlay to buttress what you're already doing. That's the politest way I could possibly say that. Deploy an immersive smart city test bed. If I told you that a city like Waterloo needs smart curb management, you'd look at me like I have two heads because you don't know what the heck that means. Even a smart street light can be very confusing. Is it a LED luminaire? Is it a network luminaire that you can control and dim, on, off, and flash, right? It is such a complex space that a smart city test bed is putting all of your tech, essentially, in a multi-block area that residents and stakeholders, academics, vendors, businesses can see and touch, that your department staff can see and touch. Because one thing we have learned, one of the many things we have learned, is that all of this smart city technology is highly interrelated. The city of San Diego thought they were leading edge. They deployed $33 million worth of smart street lights that were LED, very efficient. They were controllable, so they were networked. They had, it was the largest deployment in the world, 3,400 sensors to count people and vehicles to help with traffic planning. It's a great P3 project. And the police department started using, and there was no personal information captured by those video cameras for the intended use. Then the police department started using the video cameras to solve crimes. Makes sense? Nobody wants to argue about that. But major crimes. And then they started using the video and didn't tell anybody. Then they started, and the city didn't have a policy. And then they started using the cameras to solve medium crimes. And you can see where this slippery slope is going on privacy. And so the residents revolted and shut down a $33 million project that the city emotionally is still scarred from that blowback, because they didn't understand how the technology interacted. They didn't understand the policies needed. They didn't maintain deep and continuous stakeholder alignment. You can never communicate with your stakeholders enough. And so a smart city test bed is a way for people to come and touch it and understand it, both residents and city staff, to say, oh, okay, we got it. The picture here is something Kirk and I, that I had built in Panasonic in Denver, just this innovation showcase. We had over 4,000 people come through in 2018 alone, and we're out by the airport. If you have been to Denver, you got to really want to go to this place. And so it's a way to see, feel, touch, and understand complex interrelated technology, and it can also lure vendors to sponsor it. Okay? Implement a P3, public-private partnership for EV readiness. The city of San Diego 2 weeks ago issued a request for proposal for a vendor or consortium to deploy EV infrastructure on all city-owned properties. The vendor will finance, design, build, own, operate, and maintain over 10 years public EV charging infrastructure, and they run all the revenue risk if the revenue doesn't materialize, and they get all the revenue upside if to the degree the revenue exceeds the cost. The city gets a per port, per quarter fee for usage of the space, and a percentage of revenue fee that they're actually putting in a separate dedicated fund to buy back the depreciated infrastructure at the end of the 10 years up to $60 million. Because, I mean, that is an enormous amount of trenching and paving and transformer upgrades, 400 locations across the city. This is groundbreaking. Cities across California and across the country are going to follow this because it is revenue positive and it accelerates EV infrastructure in a very innovative way. So you're highway adjacent. You have a great way to start drawing EVs into the community. So this is something to think about when the time is right for Waterloo. But do not spend any public money on chargers for public EVs or your EV fleets. Use vendor financing. No reason not to. Develop a climate action program. You have one underway, and it can't be detailed enough or ambitious enough from our perspective. So more sooner, please. It should be very comprehensive. There are many out there that the city can use best practices for. And you're fortunately served by a utility that absolutely loves wind energy, right? You're 85% clean source fuel. Just amazing. That is not enough. That does not, you need a much more comprehensive resiliency plan for being able to maintain essential city services for, let's just say, 72 or more hours during a prolonged outage. All of your resilience plans and your sustainability plans should stem from your climate action plan. Implement renewable natural gas. You're doing a great job. You can use technology to kind of accelerate those benefits, but you're doing a great job. This is the summary of those 12 projects, scored through the Honeywell lens. In no way is this intended to really rank them ordinally, but we had to present them in some format. And so the city, you're going to see this next if you haven't already, what are the columns, the metrics that you would use to evaluate these or any projects, and how do you weight them? This doesn't mean that ubiquitous connectivity is more important than digital government, in a sense. It's just we needed a scoring rubric to put these in some fashionable, some understandable way. The city's scoring follows thusly, follows fairly closely as well. But now what is really unique about the city of Waterloo in this process is some cities, when we've presented the plan, have said, thanks. And some have said, wow, this is interesting, let's dig into it. And some, actually one, Waterloo, has said, this is very helpful, here's how we make it our own. So of all of the cities I mentioned, you stand apart in internalizing the intent and the message inherent in the strategic plan, because it is not something Honeywell has done for Waterloo or will do to Waterloo. It is something we extracted from all of the voice of community, documented, and put some creative thinking to it, and it is the city of Waterloo's plan, and that's what's exciting. Let's see. Each of these projects will have a detailed business plan. They will. And financial ROI will matter more for some projects than others. These industry metrics of operational efficiency and capital improvement have been proven over hundreds and hundreds of commercial real estate projects. So having a platform, having a smart city operating system will drive tremendous systemic operational improvements that you'll quantify over time. This is my fun slide. I love this. We're trying to help you. If you're a hockey fan, you'll be familiar with Wayne Gretzky's maxim. Why is he so great? He doesn't skate to where the puck is. He skates to where the puck is going to be. So city planning unfolds at a very slow pace, understandably, and infrastructure projects get funded and implemented sometimes on decade scale. And so as you sit there in Waterloo today, 2023, you've experienced quite a bit of technological change in your lifetimes. And the law of the law of accelerating rate of change was fashioned by Ray Kurzweil, who's a futurist and an author, who predicts that the singularity, when all of computing power exceeds human capacity, he pegs that at about 2045. And so I wanted to highlight some technological shifts underway that will that are going to impact your community's quality of life for the better or worse, depending on how you choose to react to them. Remote work. You've got a great quality of life. Lure those people out of those really ridiculously expensive communities. Give them a reason to come and stay and raise their family in Waterloo. We're going to come back to artificial intelligence, augmented and virtual reality. It's here. It's on the edge of being here right now. Robotics. There's a company called Boston Robotics, and these are all links. There's a few minute, just a couple minute video. They've been around 10 years, so it's a perfect decade snapshot of where these kludgy, ridiculously big, cumbersome robots were when they started 10 years ago to now they do parkour, if you know what that is, right? They're running and leaping and doing somersaults. They're gymnastics. And the evolution of robotics in only a decade is amazing. Fleet electrification, the mobility of everything that is fossil fuel powered is really going to change a lot of things. Battery vehicles are not just emit less greenhouse gas. When you think about it, increasingly they're batteries on wheels. So they now can provide a resilience function as well. So very innovative. Flying taxis. Are flying taxis going to come to Waterloo? Not anytime soon. Do you want to think about the space that you have to allow for flying taxi testing and development? Maybe. Can't say. But they're coming to cities right now. Climate change and community resilience. You've lived through some very extreme weather. You're going to continue to see that on a more frequent and more extreme basis. What is your plan to deal with that? And then how do you leverage social networks to get your message out, to enroll residents in co-creating your future? It's not just council. It's not just staff. Your residents are equally responsible for their future. Now I'm going to come back to AI. As rapid as this rate of change is on all of these things, the rise of artificial intelligence is absolutely stunning to me. It is on a month-to-month staggering scale. It is blowing people's minds on a monthly basis. And so the latest is, I believe, OpenGPT. So artificial intelligence, especially when paired with robotics and electrification, but artificial intelligence is going to transform work as we know it. Do not get caught flat-footed. It is going to streamline a lot of mundane work. It is going to eliminate a lot of unnecessary work. It is going to redefine what we think of computing. And I don't want to sound alarmist. I don't mean to sound alarmist. But every city I talk to, I say, someone under 30 years old better be in charge of your AI strategy. Because this is the rate of change in AI. I'm an emerging technologist my entire career. This is shocking. So I think that, and then what is this? Oh, recommended projects. So let's talk about money. I've scared you enough. Now let's talk about money. There are a few projects that we think are better suited to CapEx or OpEx. We've listed those at the bottom. The DOT SMART program actually did announce, from the time we submitted this, they did announce 59 awards worth $94 million. These are $2 million planning grants, no match, followed by $15 million in implementation. Safe Streets for All. Man, that's a lot of money. They gave away $800 million. These are all 5-year programs. This is just the first year. They gave away $800 million over 510 awards. Most of them, the vast majority, were planning grants, about a half, $750,000 on average. And then you could get up to $30 million. Atlanta got 30, but the average implementation was $16 million. So with a 20% match, for $2 million, you can get $25 million worth of federal funding. if you can successfully navigate. So what we do next is finalize the 1.0 plan. That's what we're doing here and in 2 weeks. And then work with you to prioritize your projects, how you want to, and then where do you want to pursue these grants and when. There's a real urgency on our part and certainly the mayor's part to hit the very next grant window. You got 2 bullets. When do you want to shoot them, right? And in which direction? And so I would say in closing that you want to chase the money that you have the best likelihood of securing, right? That might be FEMA funding, right? It might be public safety funding from DHS. Could be some of this DOT. There's many programs. These are the 2 new programs funded with the IJA capital. So there's a lot of great work we have done together thus far, and we helped 2 AFA member cities submit grants in November to the SMART program, San Diego and Louisville. San Diego's was a EV community resilience hub, a microgrid with fast chargers, right? Very suitable for Southern California. Unfortunately, they did not win. It was a great application and a compelling use case. And then Louisville has an extensive rail infrastructure, which means there's a lot of viaducts. And because of extreme weather events, rapid flooding, heavy rainfall, these viaducts flood suddenly, and residents have lost their lives. So that is a viaduct safety program, $2 million SMART Stage 1 to both detect flooded viaducts, and then they have a viaduct that is too low and trucks, they call it the can opener. Every month trucks are getting stuck underneath it. So far in the AFA cohort, we're 1 for 2. Our cities are 1 for 2. So, we're not going to maintain a 500 batting average, but we're very proud. We've got the best grant writing firm supporting us that we could find. So with that, I don't know if I've left enough time for Q&A. I'm going to shut up.
Right, thank you. Council, any questions? I think very aggressive schedule, a lot of pieces in there that we've been working towards, but also some creativity and cutting edge opportunities as well. So any not any questions, but any comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Sir?
I just want to say thank you for having Waterloo in this. I'm extremely excited to see our city move forward in an innovative and unique way, especially in the state of Iowa. It's fantastic that we've been able to see these plans. I've been talking with our Public Works director, and he's talked a lot about his vision of this smart city, and have talked with the mayor about his vision of this smart city. And this is one of the reasons I ran in the first place, was to see us move forward in an innovative, unique perspective. And I'm looking forward to making decisions on what comes next.
And I think the interesting part about this is, for years we've had departments that may have been ahead in this area, and we have some that may not have been ahead in certain areas. But I think we needed a holistic approach to how we move every department ahead, the utilization of technology to make decisions, how we can be smart with regards to our climate plan, how we could work with leisure services and the people that enjoy the recreation every day, how we can continue to capture gases, but at the same time, take a look at overall safety and its impacts, and how we could strengthen our police department and other offices. So it gives us a strategic view that, it's what, 5, 6, 7 years, that if someone else should happen to step into one of our positions, we still have a framework and a direction to move forward in a unified manner. And so Yeah, definitely. Thank you, George, and everyone else that's worked. This is just the beginning. We do have a pretty aggressive timeline for council. We'd like to bring this to you, and then that way we can get started. We have worked with some of our internal staff through presentations and opportunities for them to comment as well. But we really want to get started trying to seek some funding to start doing some of these projects. And there's no project that's not in here that doesn't connect directly to our 2030 vision plan as well. So this will be coming back in the next couple of weeks. If you have any questions, please feel free to send that to Wendy Bowman and myself, and we can communicate directly with the Honeywell folks as well. So George, and there's a tremendous amount of time being put in by our staff as well to try to get us to this point. So I want to thank you all. Any parting words, George?
Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for your vision and your support, honestly. And to the council, if you come across a paper-based process, ask why. Challenge your organization. This is a journey of continuous change management. It is, technology can support your evolution. It cannot drive it.
Right.
So don't be fooled by any technology vendors. Sorry.
All right.
Including Honeywell.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you all so very, very much.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
That motion's been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank